Right, so this is the second time at doing this interview because I'm a bit of an idiot and managed to forget to record it last time. So hopefully we'll have some interesting things to say because we've had a dress rehearsal. But joined today by John Wood from Tri Coaching. I've worked with John for about 5 years now, I think. And when I was thinking earlier about when I started off with John, I think my half marathon PB was 1:36. I couldn't swim any triathlon involving open water. I would just panic. The swim was just an ordeal that I had to get through. And the one in Barcelona last year was also a bit of an ordeal, but at least that was down to equipment malfunction, my glasses leaking. But I worked with John and he got me much better in the water. I've done all kinds of crazy races. Done one in Norway that involved 10,000 feet of climbing on a bike and 3,000 on a run. But only in a half marathon distance. There was the year after that. I think that was the first year we worked together, wasn't it? I think.
Yes, that was.
And then the year after that was my first Ironman race, which was the Brutal up in North Wales, one of the hardest in the world.
Just go for a little Ironman.
Yeah, just run up a mountain, all that kind of stuff. But that year was a year where things really kind of pushed on. I think my half marathon PB was down to just under 1:22 by that point. And I was just a whisker over 3 hours for a marathon barrier I broke the year after. And we've just kind of pushed on from there. And now we've got this really silly event, 37 times up the Kimmy, without sleep. And it's John's the man tasked with getting me to the big day in the position where my body's able to carry out a feat like that. So thought it'd be interesting just to kind of give people a bit of an insight into the kind of things I'll be doing over the next few months and how we're going to try and prepare for it, really.
Yeah, I can't believe that it's five and a bit years since we met. And I remember you coming for the endless pool swim, and then I remember you giving me a call a couple of weeks later, and I was walking along a seafront and just getting really excited about the fact that you were doing this crazy Axe Tri event. And helping you towards that. And I didn't realise until you just said there how far your half marathon PB has come down by in those sort of 5 years. It really puts it into perspective how much work you've put in.
Yeah, I think it's. I really needed the guidance. I think I was probably a lot of people. I'd come out of playing rugby and cricket, and I'd kind of come into triathlon and running and when I was on a rugby field, you just go 100% all the time. And if you're going to try and do longer races, you're just going to get hurt if you do that.
Yeah.
Learning to slow down and do some easier sessions was something that was a lesson that took me a while to learn, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having that conversation with you whilst I was walking along, because I remember it was really cold, blowy day, but the sun was out. And I remember having the conversation because you had told me you'd had a few niggles and that was something that was recurring. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for you, and the biggest change was that actually the majority of your running after that has been lower intensity and sort of reining in that athletes, and especially that team athlete, that athlete's imperative, that athlete's instinct to go and work hard.
Yeah, that was really hard for me to be able to kind of do that, I think, but see the benefits now. And I think that's obviously going to be a big thing if you're going to run up and down a hill 37 times, or run up a hill 37 times is not going too hard, I suppose.
I think that's the thing that people don't realise, especially non-athletes, and I know this will be seen by all sorts of different people, but I think it's even for athletes, I think people don't realise how much force goes through your body when you're running. You know, it's 4 times your body weight running easy, maybe just under that if you're really efficient and probably really light as well. But if you're then running hard on that, your muscles are fatigued, your bones are fatigued, your ligaments are fatigued, and you put in best part of 4.5, 5 times your body weight through your feet, and you're not particularly heavy. You know, I'm best part of 90 kilos, so I'm going to be 15 kilos heavier than you are, probably a bit more.
Yeah, about 11, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, times that up by 4.5. That's another 50 kilos going through my feet every time I run. And I'm not running anywhere near the distance you are.
Yeah, I think I think it's just kind of keeping a lid on it, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a difficult thing to do sometimes. But,
Yeah, and people say that they ache and they get tired, they feel sore after running, and the people like yourself, like even when you started you were, and now you can go and run for an hour and a half, and barely feel the effects of it the following day, unless you work hard.
Sometimes it takes me half an hour to get going, just to start to feel. If I've been doing a lot of training, then half an hour to get going is not unusual, just to loosen everything up. But I think a measure of how much intensity has an effect is that I felt far worse after running a 10K or doing an Olympic triathlon than I've felt after doing an Ironman. Did Ironman Barcelona last year, and was there with some friends, and a couple of us went off for a big long walk along the beach and up a hill and all kinds later on the same day, because it was just a good way to kind of loosen everything up. But then I've done Olympic distance triathlons where you're just kind of redlining the whole way round, and I've stood there being sick in a field afterwards, and I've only been going for 2.5 hours or whatever it would be, 3 hours, I don't know. So yeah, I think intensity has a big part to play. I think the other thing is I learned from working with you was the importance of kind of strength and conditioning work.
Yeah, I think, and especially for running up and down the Kimmin so many times, I mean, that strength is going to be important. One, because you're having to push the body uphill, which in itself is a strength exercise. Two, because that impact resistance, again, the amount of force you put through your feet every single step. And three, because as you get tired, that's the thing that's going to keep you upright. It's not just an endurance, it's not just an aerobic thing, being able to stay awake for 18, 20 hours, however long you end up going for.
And a bit more.
Well, Ironman's maximum is 17 hours, isn't it? So,
yeah.
So it's not just a case of being able to stay awake and keep walking for that long. It's about being able to stay upright and stay strong, and then the injury resistance on top of that. And the fact that you've got your little shed garage gym as well is going to really benefit you going forward with that.
Yeah, I could do it, tidying it up again. It was looking quite neat in lockdown number one, but kids' bikes and things tend to get in the way. But I do need to, and it's a bit cold in there in January as well. But I might have to just suck it up, I think.
Just wear a couple of extra layers to start with, and then strip off as you go along.
Yeah, good idea. I think the kind of body weight exercises you give me are really helpful as well, just for kind of stability and that kind of thing. And I think probably I gain more from doing those than I do from a weight session. If I'm doing those consistently, then I think that I feel like my running form is better. Particularly when I'm tired, I feel like I'm running my running style is better. I ran for 2 hours this morning, 3 times up the Kimmin, and as I was coming back home, kind of a mile and a half from the foot of the Kimmin back to the house, I just felt like I was running along and everything was flowing nicely, which is probably a result of that. So I've been running off road for most of the time, and it's muddy and squelchy, and your ankles are twisting and all those kind of things. Your body needs to be able to kind of put up with those things.
Yeah, I think you've got two things going on there, and the little body weight exercise that we do they're great for consistency. They're great for proprioception as well, which is obviously when you're doing the off-road bits, that's the thing that really makes a difference. As you said about your ankles going in different directions, it's that stability. And if you're doing them consistently, not only is your proprioception better, not only is your injury risk minimized, but like I say, it wakes you up a little bit. It makes you ready to run, or helps you cool down from a run. I think the pure strength side of things, like the heavier stuff with proper weight, that will help you in terms of just general overall power and keeping everything going. And like I said, I think they offer two different sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So the other thing that's obviously going to be important is the nutrition side of things, which I think is something I've done pretty well with, I think, in iron distance racing. I tend to kind of stick to a formula of 300 calories an hour and try to drink plain water, but with salt tablets rather than sports drinks. So I think that it's not just the dentist in me, but I don't have a particularly sweet tooth. So I think sometimes a nice drink of water, but watching the salt levels suits me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there are people who do sort of bespoke salt testing and that sort of thing, but I think you can do a lot of that yourself. Obviously, at the high levels, it's quite nice, or if you're having issues, and it's good to be able to get tested and make sure. But obviously, those salts make a difference because they help your nerves function, they help minimise against cramps. But just making sure that you're practicing those things. And to all intents and purposes, what we're doing with you now is no different to what we did with you before Barcelona and before Italy and before the Brutal, in that you're practicing the things that you need before you get there. So you're not trying anything new. So like you said, drinking water with salt tablets, and you've been talking about sort of recipes for making flapjacks or savoury things that you can take, so you're not just eating processed stuff, because your stomach will be better with that. But also, as you said, you haven't got the sweetest of teeth.
Yeah. I can't turn up to work on a Monday with a heap of cavities, can I? It wouldn't look very good. And I think the other thing that I think that the big unknown for me this time, I know I've done, how long did the Brutal take? That was 15 and a half hours. So I know I can keep going for a long period of time. And I know I can pace myself as well, because I think I made up, I was 35th when I got off the bike and finished 17th or 18th. So I know that I can keep going kind of long into the day. But the big unknown for me this time is running through the night. So I'll be starting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I know that I'm going to have to run in the night at some point. So I figured if I start in the afternoon, then hopefully I'm going to be relatively fresh compared to if I start first thing in the morning when the dark hours come. So hopefully I'll be able to have a support crew. Hopefully COVID regulations will be relaxed enough to have support runners. But any other kind of tips for getting through that?
I think that one of the things we're going to have to do, and I think this is something we've talked about on a few occasions, is making sure that you run in the night on occasion. It only has to be an hour here or there. It doesn't have to be super long runs, but just getting used to running in the dark with a head torch, and doing a bit of off-road running. I've not done run racing off-road at night. Sorry, I've done. We're a group of friends of mine. We used to do what we used to call Blair Witch running. So we used to run in the woods around Bristol in the dark in like November, December time, which was quite good fun.
Probably less dangerous than running around Bristol in the dark.
And things come at you fast. And you're running with a head torch, and things just sort of pop out of the gloom at you. And so the concentration levels have to be there. And you do feel like you're going faster, and you do feel like you're working a little bit harder for the same speed. So that's something to get used to. But obviously running when you're a bit tired, whether it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night, is useful practice. And the other thing, as we've spoken about, is getting time on your feet across a day, but not necessarily doing it all in one run, so you can recover a little bit quicker. So you can split things up. So you could do a run at, I don't know, 7 or 8 in the morning and do an hour and a half, 2 hours, but then do your hour at night. At the moment, you probably only have to go out at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and it'd be proper nighttime running.
Yeah.
But you get 2 runs in the day, so you can get anywhere between, I don't know, 12, 13 miles, depending on how much you're doing off road, and 18 miles, 19, 20 miles possibly. No, probably that's a bit far, but you can get a good amount of mileage in across a day without it having a 20-mile run's worth of recovery required afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's the big plan today, isn't it? So I've been out this morning. I've done 12 and a half miles this morning. It took me just over 2 hours, and then go out for an hour later. I might take my eldest with me to drag me along. He quite enjoys running. He wants to run a couple of reps with me as well on the day. Probably one on the Friday and then one on the Saturday.
I think it'd be great. I think both for this evening and again, as much as it's a solitary thing running, isn't it? We do a lot of our training on our own, but the more you can do with other people, whether it's your son or whether I know you run with Hugh when COVID regulations allow. being able to run with other people keeps it fresh, and it keeps the RPE, keeps the rate of exertion low, and that's always got to be good for you.
Yeah. And the other thing that people, well, I know I asked you about, and probably non-runners would be interested to know, if you're going to run 37 times up a hill, what is the kind of limit of how far you should train? Because obviously training is a balance between getting the fitness into you and not overdoing it to the degree that you can't then go and train for the next week and a half.
Yeah.
So in terms of kind of a longest run, how many hours or miles would you think would be a suitable limit for something like this? I know when we've done a marathon, we've probably done kind of 2.5, 2 3/4 hours as the longest run, which is probably the majority of the time I'd be on my feet, but I'm not going to want to go and run 22 hours this time, am I, in order to prove I can?
No, and again, it's not the last comment there, the to prove you can, is part of the reason why people want to run longer as well. When people run marathon distance and it's a race, the accepted wisdom is that it's about a day per mile for your recovery. Now, obviously, when you go and run your marathon itself, you're running harder because you've got the adrenaline and potentially you're after a particular time. Whereas when you're doing your training, most of your running is a little bit easier than that, but it's that time on your feet. So when you run a marathon, it's somewhere between 20 and 22 miles is what people tend to top out at, because once you can get there, it's another, depending on your speed, somewhere between, if you're Kipchoge or Farah, so 20 minutes left on your marathon, and if you're Last Mere Mortals, it's more like 35, 40. There you go. With what you're doing now, it's more like your Wisest Way run. We want to be able to spend time on your feet, but again, it's low intensity. So anything in this sort of 6-hour region is going to be good. Mixing it up with a little bit of hills, because obviously you're going to need to be comfortable with that when you're tired, but just time on your feet on the flat as well. So you could do a 6-hour outing, and we'll probably only do one of those, maybe 3 weeks out or so, where you do a couple of climbs of the Kimmin, do a couple of hours really easy, just flat, then do another couple of climbs, maybe do another hour of flat, and then do another climb just to finish you off at the end of the day, just to see how you feel after that amount of time. But again, as you said, we don't want to be doing too much of that sort of stuff. It's more about the regularity of running, consistency of running, and how we break it up across the weeks, just to keep moving and keep building it up.
Yeah, I think that it's important psychologically to do some of those longer ones as well. I think when I did Ironman Italy, I had a really rough patch on the run, mostly because it was just so bloody hot. It was 34 degrees or something running a marathon, having done everything else already, and I was feeling really rough. But the thing that got me through was thinking back to a training session I did where I cycled in pouring rain for 4 hours, and then came back. I had to change my kit because I came in and I was absolutely dripping wet, and I started to shiver. I knew I had to then go out and run for 2 hours as well. So into dry kit, out the door, back in the pouring rain, pounding down the river, down the side of the river, down to Simmons Yat and back in the pouring rain. But I think those sessions almost count double, because you kind of, when you get to a rough period, you need something you can kind of grab hold of. I think it's a bit like, I don't know if you've read David Goggins' book. I think you'd enjoy it. He talks about having a cookie jar. So the cookie jar is this kind of theoretical cookie jar in his brain, where he's got memories of things that have been really tough that he's done and he's got through before. So you can kind of grab hold of those and go, well, if I can do 4 hours running in the rain, riding in the rain, and 2 hours running and dodging potholes and cars spraying water all over me, then I can run a bloody marathon in the sun. But I think, so like a 6-hour run with an ascent of the Kimmin in the last half hour, whatever, is really going to be something I can kind of grab hold of in the wee small hours when my body's screaming at me to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. My old coach, my swim coach, when I was training, used to talk about sessions being money in the bank, but not just about the distance you swam and the efforts you put in, but exactly what you just said about experiences. We all have sessions where it's horrible, where it feels disgusting. Doesn't matter whether it's a weight session, a run session, a bike session, how long it was, how short it was. Like you said about doing Olympic distance try and vomiting at the end of it, we've had those sessions. Most people have had those at some point, especially if they've been training for more than a year or two. And so when you know what it feels like to feel yuck, I'm choosing my language carefully because I don't know who might watch this, but when you're feeling that low and that rubbish, and you finish your session, it might be slow, might be tired, but you finish your session, you go, actually, you know what, that's up there.
Yeah,
I know I can do that. I know I can beat whatever life throws at me.
yeah, and I think obviously with this being a charity event as well, and that's another big motivating factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people watching. I mean, fundraising is going fantastically well. We've just clicked over £1,500 today already, and we're still best part of 3 months out with a £5,000 total target. So hopefully we're going to hit that and go past it even. But £1,500 at this point, that's enough money to motivate me to go out and do it. And if when my legs are sore and my feet are aching and all those kind of things, that'll be a big motivating thing. And knowing that people are going to be watching as well. As when I did the Wisest Way back in September, my phone was in my pack and it connects to my watch, and I was getting all these messages from people on WhatsApp and Messenger telling me that they were people were dot watching, and you just can't stop that because everybody knows that you've failed if you do. And that's it's great to have those messages, but also knowing that people are watching and they're expecting you to carry on and do it is also quite powerful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to borrow from a couple of, the mental side of things, obviously being a coach, I'm dealing with the mental stuff anyway. It's not my area of expertise, shall we say, but borrowing from a couple of other mental strength coaches and mental health coaches, I think it's making sure that you view those things in the positive way that, as you say, are not feeling a pressure on it, because it's very easy. Again, it's not just necessary for you, but for other people who will watch this video and probably think, okay, what events can I do? What challenges can I do? It's going, okay, so that's not pressure on me. That's just people supporting me and taking that in a way that lifts you up rather than makes you run scared, because you want that positive side of things. You want to take the best of it rather than the negative feel.
Yeah, I think for me it works kind of both ways. I think sometimes those messages are great and that keeps me going. And there's other times when I need a bit more of a kick up the backside. I think we're kind of into the chimp paradox again here, and kind of offering that chimp a banana or sticking it in a cage. And I think by the time I get to the point where I'm thinking, well, there's lots of people watching me now, that's when I'm telling that chimpanzee in my brain to shut up and get back in the cage and ignore it. But I've got another one of these chats lined up with a friend of mine called Duncan, who's very much into kind of the mental side of things, and kind of helping people with all kinds of daily stuff in their daily lives, but also sporting as well. So I'm quite looking forward to catching up with him and see if he's got any tips as well. So I think that's pretty much all we were going to cover. So really grateful for your time, John. If anyone is looking for a tri coach, then John's your man. And I've sent several friends of mine who are triathletes over to John for some swim coaching as well, and it really is money well spent. An hour in an endless pool with John, kind of taking your technique apart and putting it all back together again. I think the first session I did with John, I think when I got in the pool, I was splashing around all over the place, and by the time I got out, I was swimming 25-30 seconds per 100 meters quicker with less effort. And that was well worth every penny, and it wasn't expensive either, which is great news. So everyone who wants to improve their swimming should give John a call when COVID is all done and dusted. I had my jab a couple of days ago, so hopefully the rest of you will be following soon. And so far, Bill Gates hasn't controlled me in any way whatsoever. I just had a bit of a sore arm, so I think we're all good.
Yeah, it's all good, and honestly, I'm hoping that I can come and run with you on it's 9th of April, isn't it?
Yes, the Friday and Saturday after Easter.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that I can come run with you and do at least a couple of climbs with you, because it'd be great to support. and see who's there as well, because I think it'd be a good community event as well.
I think so. I have made a little. I did put my GoPro on just after Christmas, and I ran up the hill. So we're going to put a video together of that. So before you commit to 2 laps, maybe watch that one.
Don't say it consecutively.
Well, that's a good point. Anyway, thanks for your time, and maybe we'll catch up with and do another one of these close to the time about tapering and kind of the last few weeks.
Happy days.
Thank you.